Hey, this is Joe from Presonus. In this video, we're going to take a little detour and dive into a simple little song that I recently produced that has a cool ambient vibe. Recently, I recorded a cover of one of my favorite old songs, and I wanted to do it as a guitar vocal, but instead of acoustic guitar, I used electric guitar, and I tried to create a cool ambient, sort of spacey, yet intimate vibe using all Presonus plugins. So I'm going to play a snippet of it for you, and then I'll dive in and show you exactly how I did it.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed day, dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
All right, let's dive into this session. So a couple of things about the recording. First, I played and sang at the same time, so I could speed up, slow down, and just get that live performance. But the vocal was captured through a microphone, the guitar was captured direct, triggering sounds in Ampire. Also, if you're curious, that guitar was in DADGAD tuning, except down another step. So C, G, C, F, C, G, F, G, C. Anyway, whatever DADGAD is, but down a full step. So very low on my Telecaster over there. And there was quite a bit of buzz. I think this room that we're in isn't grounded properly because I can't seem to get, when I take my hand off the guitar, it's fairly buzzy. And I know buzz is normal, but instead of trying to fix it, I just rolled off the high end on the guitar and then did a little bit of the same on the guitar track, which I'll show you in a second. So let's start with that guitar. So here is the raw guitar track, which really is pointless. Really no point in listening to this. Okay, that's no point. But here's the core tone that I created. So I used our splitter tool, which if you haven't messed with splitter, you need to check it out. And I used two instances of Ampire. So I used the same amp for both, pretty much dialed into the same-ish tone. One has a little more drive than the other. You can see the EQs, the reverb settings are all pretty similar. And I just have the guitar split going into two different inputs to get slightly different tone. And it's doing a channel split. So the left amp is on the left, the right amp is on the right when we listen in stereo. And here's what that sounds like with just the guitar going into those two amps. So it's a fairly mono sound, but it has a little bit of width to it. But you'll notice that's still a little bit different from what the final version sounded like. So here's what else happened. First, I used Pro EQ just to roll off the extra top end. That kind of the noise that I was talking about, the buzz that was there, that helped remove a little bit of that. It was helpful to remove it before it hits the amp versus after. Then we've got our two amps. And then the signal, as you can see via the splitter, the signal comes back together and we go through a few other plugins. First is Fat Channel. Fat Channel is one of my favorite plugins. And I used the Tube Comp and the Vintage EQ. Didn't do a whole lot. Tube Comp is just kind of gluing, since it's finger style, it's a quiet part, so I wanted each note to kind of have a little bit of punch to it. And then just a tiniest bit of EQ here with a high pass filter to tighten up the sound a little bit. So here's what that sounds like. So the goal with this compressor was really just when I hit those low notes, they're going to be so much louder because they're so deep, have the compressor hit on those low notes and the rest don't get touched as much, and it helps it feel a little more balanced there. Then I decided to mess with x-trem. If you're not familiar with x-trem, it's a really cool tremolo plugin included in Studio One, and it does a lot of different things, but this is just set to a really basic tremolo setting, and the depth is only at 4%. So it's not big, whoa, 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 whoa. It's just very subtle, but it gives this sense of movement to the guitar. So I'll start it without the tremolo, then I'll turn it on. I don't even hear it a lot there. When I was playing it, I could hear it a little bit more. It more almost sounds like I'm shaking my fingers doing like a vibrato thing. Has that kind of vibe when I hold a note instead of just going dum. It does just a little bit of dum with a little volume change. So that didn't do a whole lot. The big changer for me as far as tone was when I reached for, oh yeah, I did another Pro EQ because there was still too much low end at the end, so I moved some more low end off. But the big change was when I used my room reverb. So let me show you my room reverb setting that I use all the time. I may have shown you this before, but here it is. This is actually a plate reverb. So using the room reverb plugin, come in and find the flat plate setting, and then set the length to like 6 seconds. I know it sounds ridiculous, but then send your guitar or your vocal, I have both in this case, to that room reverb. Listen to how big and wide it sounds, and you just need to send a little bit. It just becomes almost this pad that supports the guitar underneath. We don't have tons, but enough to hear it, and it just kind of creates this lush tone. The guitar itself already has a little bit of spring reverb on it from the amp, but now we've added this extra layer of reverb on top. One of the ways to make sure this works well is to always put an EQ after your reverb, roll off the lows, and even sometimes cut some of the mid-range to make it work. And if you don't do that, it can sound really muddy. You hear kind of that woo, 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 just a constant woofiness. That's the reverb. Turn this EQ on, we get all the ambience without the woofiness. This is the reverb by itself. We don't need, I've not found many situations where I need low end in the reverb, unless maybe it's an orchestral thing and I want the big upright basses to cut through and have some deep low end there. Most of the time I'm rolling it off and the mix cleans up tremendously because of it. And then I decided to do one extra thing. I decided to add analog delay before the reverb. So I've got it set to a mix of about 37%. And this is just set to, I don't even know if I dialed in a specific tempo. I just put it on there as a stereo delay just to delay the sound even more and create more ambience. So here's what the delay sounds like without the reverb. Yeah, since I recorded this without a click, I just dialed that time factor in until it felt like a good sort of repetition for the song. So it gives this nice little dum ba dum ba dum ba dum on the guitar. And it's subtle, but then that delayed signal is now going into the reverb, and you get both the delay and the reverb, and it's just beautiful. So I set up this tone and then I played through it. So I'm listening to that lush reverb and delay, and it changes the way I play. I play a lot more subtle and I don't play as many notes, and I try to just let the notes be clear and ring out and not try to overplay, which is why it's so important to dial in your tones so you play and record with the tones versus dialing in a really basic sound and then adding the effects later. Neither is wrong, but in this instance, it helped me get a really cool performance and create this vibe. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because I was sitting here, I was kind of facing that way with the mic over here, and I just got lost in it. And next thing I knew, I was done and thinking, oh, wow, I just captured something special. Okay, now let's move over to the vocal. Vocal is a pretty simple processing. I really wanted, kind of similar to the guitar, I wanted the vocal to stay intimate, and I wanted the louder notes to get smushed down to be as the same volume as the quieter notes. So I used this classic compressor. It tends to have a pretty fast attack to it. Rolled off a good bit of low end. Used a little bit of EQ, but again, I didn't do much. But the compressor is doing, you saw that when I did the playback. It's hitting the vocal fairly hard, but it doesn't sound super compressed. So here's that vocal by itself without the reverb or anything else.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself.
So all the really quiet, I was singing very quiet. The quietest parts don't touch the compressor, and then when I push in just a little bit to get some volume, that triggers the compressor. Then, of course, I had to send this vocal to that same reverb as before, and we get this.
I see trees of green, red roses too.
It's very, you can see even just looking at the levels, it's a lot less going to it than the guitar, but it just adds a little bit of ambience to the vocal, but the vocal still has this dry feel and in your face and intimate feel, but it's got some space too, so it's not completely naked. I love doing this on vocals. It's a very subtle thing, but it's very cool, especially when you listen on headphones. And then I added a compressor set to just a de-esser mode. Some of the S's were coming through, so I have this compressor only listening to everything above 6K and just chopping those extra sibilant parts off. Like also on the faces at the bridge part. Is it here?
I hear the colors of the rainbow.
In a second, I sing all the pretty faces or something like that, and the S's there were kind of out of control. So that de-esser compressor there tames those pretty well.
In the sky, also on the faces of people going by.
Oh, I had the reverb off. I was wondering why it sounded so dry. Here it is with everything in.
Also on the faces of people going by. I see friends.
So I hope that was helpful for you to see. With just the stuff included with Studio One, that one compressor that I use is in an extra pack that you can purchase, or it's included in Presonus Sphere. But most of the tone, the core tone you hear here, is from Studio One. You can get some great ambient sounds there. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
Babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think